want to talk about shared ownership schemes now. Shared ownership mortgages, of course, go with the shared ownership scheme. And I've called this rebooted because I think we're ready to reboot these things for the third decade. Now, some inventions that are made last forever, don't they? Think about things like the bicycle, invented in the late 19th century. Been around for donkey's years, still going very strong. The zipper is still going strong. Aerosol sprays were invented many decades ago and they're still going strong as well. Shared ownership is another example of a brilliant invention that's still going relatively strong, but probably needs a bit of a reboot. I mean, bicycles have had a reboot with electric bikes, haven't they? Everyone's driving around with electric bikes now. We went for a walk on Sunday and across the common, and people on bikes, which is fine, it's a bridle way, isn't it? All electric bikes. But anyway, shared ownership was originally invented or created in the 1980s Housing Act. So it's been around as long as I've been a sort of a teenager, really. Have they been successful? Yes, they have, to a certain degree. So let's just brush up on some of the knowledge to make sure that we understand what a shared ownership scheme is. The mortgage that goes with this is called a shared ownership mortgage. Now, first of all, a shared ownership property or scheme is a property or block of flats built normally by a housing association or converted by a housing association and then given to people on their list. That's particularly important. So you've got a list. Now the list, and I'm not going to get political with this one, are people that deserve it more than others. These are people that can't normally afford to buy their own house. If they were to rent, it would probably be on the private rental market. So these people on their list get offered these properties. They're built really well. I've worked for a number of housing associations, and they're very ethical people. I mean, strongly so. And they build good quality houses, not fancy dancy properties, but good quality properties. In fact, I was passing over in Gloucester the other day. I cycled along the Sharpness Canal, and I had a look at these properties, which is just a leaflet that they've introduced. And these are out just along the Sharpness Canal. And they're beautiful properties, as you can see, overlooking the canal and the docks. The docks has been renovated. And these are built by Guinness Homes. Guinness Homes is a housing association. They've been around for over 100 years. And you can go on the website, have a look inside. They're nice flats. I don't know if you can see the picture there of the inside. Let's just put that there so you can see that. Can you see the beautiful flats inside with a balcony overlooking the water? You know, they're lovely properties. But the whole point behind them is that when they're built and given to people, they're not given, obviously. They're sold, but a percentage of the property is sold to somebody. So just look at a visual example for you. Here's a picture of my property here. I've got here a property worth £150,000. It's a house. And I've got 40% is going to be sold to somebody. So they're going to buy that bit. But the rest of it is then rented to or by the housing association at a fair rent. So I did some details on this particular example for you, and the rent on this one would be about £200 per month, which, you know, is not a lot if you compare that with private rental figures. Now there is, if it's a flat, for example, there is obviously a ground rent to pay. There's also a service charge, so be careful of that one. So if you add a service charge to that, now that would cover things like the buildings insurance, the servicing of the property, because you're still renting more than half of the property, aren't you? So there is a little bit of a charge there, but it's a fair charge. It's not over the top at all. Now the great thing is you get to buy a small part of the property. Now, because you're buying a small part of the property, you don't need so much of a mortgage, if you think about it. So this particular example, I've got a 40% share which I'm buying. Now this means that that share you're buying is for £60,000. There you go. Let's put that in there so you can see that. So you're buying £60,000 of that property, a 40% stake. Now you'll need a mortgage on that, but you'll only need a 5% deposit. So let's squeeze that in there for you. Now the 5% deposit comes out at £3,000, which then requires a 95% mortgage for £57,000. Simple as that, really. Obviously that's a lot of money, don't get me wrong. And you apply for a shared ownership mortgage from a lender. The mainstream lenders all do them, banks, building societies. So you get a good rate of interest on that one. Yeah, it's 95% lending, but it's good lending as far as the lender is concerned. And you pay your mortgage payment on that. So I know what that is, whatever rate of interest you've been able to get would determine your monthly payment. And that's broadly how it works. It's not much more complicated than that. Now, as I mentioned to you, the rent that you pay, this one's £200 a month, is kind of subsidised in a way. These housing associations are non-for-profit. They don't make profit. They're not like Simon Loans, Bovis, all these people. They have shareholders to pay, don't they? So they need to make profits. So it's all ploughed back in. So you can see where the cost savings coming into its own, isn't it? Now, you pay the service charge, I mentioned that before, and you rent the rest of it. And the good thing about it, though, is you can staircase. That's the big phrase to use, isn't it? Staircase. Now, staircasing means that you can buy further shares in the future. Now, the 1980 Housing Act pretty much brought in the concept of staircasing. And this means that a few years down the line, if you wish to, you could say to the housing association, look, we've got more income now coming in. We'd like to buy the rest of the property, or we'd like to buy another 30% share. So they might buy a 30% share of that property, take out another mortgage or a further advance on their existing mortgage, or remortgage the whole thing to make a lot of difference, and buy another share. Pay a bigger mortgage, of course, but pay less rent. And eventually, if they want to, they can end up buying the entire property, which is the ultimate aim for most people. Okay, a couple of small things there. If people own a bit of the property, or if they own all the property and it's a big block, for example, the block it gets looked after in a different way. My parents bought their council house back in the 80s. Different concept, that I get that. But literally overnight, everybody else bought their council houses, and the whole street just improved. People, built extensions. They put hedges out there. They made the front look lovely. It just gentrified the whole area. Whether you agree with that or not, the politics, it does make a difference when people own a bit of their property. And staircasing gives people the ability to do it in stages as their life and their income changes. Stamp duty, land tax, worth mentioning. Comes up in the exam quite a bit, really. Stamp duty, of course, is paid when you purchase properties above different limits. Quite a healthy limit at the moment. Now, with staircasing and with shared ownership, you can opt for two ways of paying stamp duty. If you wanted to, you could apply to pay your stamp duty on the whole value of the property, or you can pay it on the share you're buying. But bear in mind that when you start staircasing and your total share goes up, you will at some point probably exceed the stamp duty threshold. You will pay it if you carry on staircasing. Now, in this situation, of course, the 150 is below the current level, so you probably opt for the full price here. But if that house was worth 400,000 or 500,000, then you may want to not pay the stamp duty up front. You might just apply the stamp duty on your share that you're buying, which will be below the threshold. That's something to think about as well, stamp duty. The other thing is this list. So selling the property is the other big issue here, selling the property. Now, we passed by some homes. We went for a walk this weekend, Shelley and I. We passed by these new warden-assisted properties built in Cheltenham for sale, because I hit 60 last week. I'm sure I've mentioned it a couple of times. It was a week before. But anyway, these warden-assisted properties are only available to people over the age of 60. So I can buy one now if I want to. But of course, when you come to sell it, you can only sell it to somebody over the age of 60. So you haven't got an entire market to put your house on the market for, which will reduce the price. Likewise, many of these properties, if you decide to sell and move on, you have to sell it back to the housing association, who then will give it to somebody on their list. And that restricts things, so you've got to be a bit careful with that one. Look at the terms and conditions on that one itself. So where will shared ownership go in the future? It's been languishing around for the last few decades. You're relying on people like Guinness Homes, for example, to build these properties. There's Evesham near us. There's another housing association there who build properties, but they don't build that many because they haven't got a lot of money. There's not a lot of government money swilling around at the moment. So I think what's going to happen in the future is, with the housing crisis that we have, we're going to get local authorities possibly to start building more properties with government money. It's all like secured on property, isn't it? But rather than give people the right to buy council housing, I think maybe they'll build with the right to shared ownership. so people can buy bits of the property as they improve themselves. Maybe that's a way of ending the housing crisis. Local authorities building properties, housing associations, more government money. The shared ownership right will come in and allow people to buy properties. Maybe, just maybe, that's a way to combat the housing crisis. Hope so. Something to think about. So there we have shared ownership, rebooted for the third decade. Something for you as a mortgage broker to think about.